Welcome to Ohio to Erie Trail 101, hosted by the Ohio to Erie Trail. My name is Tom Biltz, and I lead the Ohio to Erie Trail marketing team. I will be moderating tonight's webinar. I encourage you to respond to the poll currently displayed on your screen. I want to review the ground rules for tonight's webinar. I have placed everyone on mute to avoid background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. Your participation is important and questions are encouraged. I will be monitoring the chat box. You can enter your question in the chat box at any time. Ample time has been allocated to answer questions during and at the end of tonight's presentation. We'll continue to let attendees respond to the poll. As you can see, the majority of the respondents are from states other than listed above. I do happen to note that Ohio is not listed, unfortunately. But welcome to tonight's webinar. At this time, I'd like to introduce tonight's speakers. Lisa Darris is the executive coordinator for the Ohio to Erie Trail. Lisa is a resident of Columbus, Ohio. She is the person that most often will respond to your emails and Facebook messages, in addition to her numerous other duties in the Trails office. Lisa is an avid cyclist and is a two-time member of the 326 Club, the group of people who have traveled the 326 miles of the Ohio to Erie Trail from end to end. Lisa is also an avid kayaker and is often seen leading kayak excursions through Central Ohio waterways. Matt Simpson is a member of the Ohio to Erie Trail Board of Directors. Matt is a resident of Delaware, Ohio, where he is the senior park planner for Preservation Parks of Delaware County and is also a landscape architect. Matt is an avid cyclist and is a member of the 326 Club also. Matt will be sharing his 326 adventure in this webcast. At this time, I would turn the webinar over to Lisa Darris. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everyone. Hope you guys in Ohio are staying warm. I look out my window and I see quite a bit of snow, but this is a perfect time to start thinking about planning a trip, whether it be just a few afternoons when the weather gets warmer, or an overnight trip or a multi-day trip. As Tom mentioned, I've traveled along the trail. I've done the entire trail twice, and I reside in Franklin County, so I'm most familiar with Delaware, Franklin, and Knox County, the surrounding counties from where I live. I'd first just kind of like to start off. I think we've got most of the folks voted on the first poll, but Tom, if you don't mind to queue up the other poll, just to get a sense of what everyone in the audience might be planning for this this season. It will be a little bit of a different season for some people, just like last season. As you can imagine, we saw a big increase of use of the trail last year. So go ahead, I'll give you a few minutes to read. There's 3 questions here, just to get a sense for who we have in the audience and what everyone's planning on doing. So this is the second webinar on this topic, and the last one we had The majority, if I remember correctly, the majority of folks were doing unsupported as well. Some of you are doing the stay at a hotel, which is what I've done a little bit of both, so I can speak to both of that. And I suppose on that question too, we should probably put, if you're doing a little bit of both, one pro tip that I'll give you is that if you are looking for campsites, and we'll talk about that here, I'll go over where to find a list of those. Campsites are hard to come by in urban areas. And so if you're starting at either terminus, Columbus is sort of in the middle. And that's where it sometimes makes sense to splurge and stay in a hotel. And then you can camp along the way at the other locations. All right, so let's see. We've got about 84% people voted. Looks like a lot of folks are still kind of trying to make up their mind about whether they're going to do a multi-day trip. Well, hopefully after this webinar, you'll be confident enough that you'll try that this season. Great. And this last question is good for me because I'll try to speak to some of that. Okay, accommodations and campsites, sure. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And basically, let's see, give me just a second. I'm going to pull up some screens here. The first one being our YouTube channel. And last season, we received a grant and some funding from the Ohio Department of Tourism, and we were able to create a promotional video. So I am going to bring this up to full screen and just, I think this is a good place to start. You know what? I bet you can't hear that. So let me share my sound. Okay, now.
Discover the Ohio to Erie Trail. Whether you're looking for a few hours of fun, a weekend to remember, or a multi-day adventure, we have 326 miles of smiles to enjoy. Experience the charms and wows of both small towns and big cities. Discover local treasures. Bike. Hike. Geocache. Walk. Skate or run. Whatever you do, you'll have fun. To see trail resources, amenities, campsites, lodging, and more, visit ohiotoerietrail.org. Adventure and fun is yours to discover. Find it here on the Ohio to Erie Trail.
Unmute. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. So that was from our YouTube channel, and there's other videos on here too that I would invite you to check out because they do give a good overview of the trail. Today, I'm going to just kind of go over some resources that are available through the internet and on our website, and also talk about ordering maps. And then as questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat box, and Tom will be monitoring them so that if either I or Matt don't answer them at the end, there'll be time to go over those questions. So obviously, when you're planning your trip, you definitely want to spend a little time on our website, because this website is where all the information is that we've put out there. So sort of the official information. We also have an official Facebook page, which is showing right here. And this is a good page to look at leading up to your trip. If we find out that there is construction or a place where they're doing last minute repairs on the trail, we typically put it here. So this is a good place to monitor in the weeks and days leading up to your ride. And we also put some posts here about different events that are happening along the trail. And we use it to promote the trail in different ways. You'll see that we sometimes feature a 326 member. And for those of you who don't know what a 326 club member is, it's someone who has traveled the entire trail in a single trip. Now, people have said, well, that's easy to do on a bike, but what about hiking or walking? And so we've made some accommodations. If you go to that page, you can still qualify. If you're a hiker or a walker, you can still qualify to become a 326 club member by doing it within a specific time. The next Facebook page that I just pulled up here is, this is what I consider sort of a community Facebook page, meaning anyone can post to it. And it is also a really great resource. It has input from all sorts of people who spend an hour on the trail to people who are out on the trail day after day and traveling along the trail for multi-day trips. So this is a really good resource too. And Tom, I should probably remind you, if you could put some of these links into the chat so folks can add them to their bookmarks. And we'll also have a list at the end of this that we'll send out with all the links. So where do you start if you're planning a trip on the Ohio to Erie Trail? Well, a good place to start is our destinations and itineraries page. And this is right under our maps header. Okay, right here is how I got to this page. And if you pull up the itineraries, this is a great place to start. And it's a good place because you can start to say, well, how many miles do I want to travel each day? Granted, this is geared a little bit towards cycling, but if you only have 5 days, you would look at the 5-day ride itinerary and you can kind of see what towns you'd be in and how many miles you'd have to accomplish every single day. So this is a good place for when you're just starting to think about traveling on the trail. You may be the type of person that likes to just get to the destination every day, and you don't have a problem biking some high miles, because once you get to your destination, you might check into your hotel, or if you're staying at a campsite, put up a tent, and then you go explore. But you also might be the type of person who likes to stop along the way every 15 miles or so and explore those areas. So you've got to kind of ask yourself those questions as you're planning your trip. Speaking of planning your trip, we have a page called Plan Your Trip. This is a page that you'll want to spend a lot of time on as well. There's a lot of different links on this page, starting with ordering our tour guide, which is paper maps. They have a little bit of a glossy finish to make them a little bit weatherproof. They're not waterproof, but they stand up pretty well. And they're divided into 4 different segments. So you don't have this really long, big, unwieldy piece of paper to deal with. 4 different segments. And on those 4 different segments, there are icons that show where the lodging is, where grocery stores are, that sort of thing. It's something that I would suggest if you're planning a multi-day event. It's a must. You should purchase that. And then people say, well, what about digital guidance? Things like, you may have heard Ride with GPS or Map My Ride. We have those covered too. And I'll show you that in a little bit when we get to the map discussion. But I would still take a map with me, and I would use the technology as a backup because you're out there many, many hours a day. And it's a good way if you're on a smartphone to drain a battery. Now, if you have a device, a GPS device, by all means, you can download the links into the GPS device and use that as your main source of navigation. But the maps are really great to have. Scrolling through here, I want to bring your attention to the street and road guides. If we bring this up, this is a common question that we get from time to time, and this should show here in a second. Where are all of our gaps that we're still working on? The trail is a work in progress, and so we still have some roads and streets that we're working on. Of course, some of the roads and streets may never be completely converted into trail. For example, downtown Columbus, but we have chosen very pedestrian-friendly roadways for those areas that are just tough to find any type of vacant corridor where we can put in a trail. So you'll want to take a look at this just to know where the different roadways are. Getting back to the Plan Your Trip page, here we have what a lot of people said they were interested in. We have a lodging and a campsite PDF file. So if you pull these up, you will see in order of as you travel from north to south, you'll see links and details about the different lodging options on the trail. Okay. Some of them we have various, because as you can imagine in Franklin County, there's quite a few, and they change hands from time to time, so we don't list them all. Since I've been the director since 2015, we've really seen some Airbnbs pop up over the last few years, which if you've never tried Airbnb, it's a nice option. I've stayed at about a dozen of them, and I've had a great experience every time. Here's one that's specific for bike Airbnb. So this is a good resource for those of you who are planning for to stay in hotels. We also, of course, have campsites as well, listed out the same way. Similar, same format. Going back to Plan Your Trip, you'll find other information, different types of amenities. So that's a list that's going to include grocery stores, ice cream shops, bike shops, things like that. Here's another list too that includes just, it's a isolated list of just bike repair shops. And you've got some other information down here, hotels and parking, and also other ways to get to the trail. All right, so when you're planning your trip, this is a really good page with a lot of different resources on it. Let's see, the last thing I wanted to bring your attention to is our interactive map page. We have a board member who has volunteered a lot of his time to develop this interactive map. He also does our printed maps, and they're always in sync with each other. So you'll get onto the interactive map by just clicking on Maps to Interactive Map. You can enlarge it to full screen, and that's where the features really start to come out. So as you start to zoom in, you can start to see more detail to the maps. You can kind of drag it to see what, for those of you who have ever used Google Maps, it works similarly to Google Maps with some extra features. For example, if you click on these boxes over here, different things will pop up. So if you want to see where the trailheads are, you click on that, and you'll notice that all these little green onion icons started to pop up. And if you click on one of them, it will typically have a photo so that you can just see and recognize what that trailhead looks like. Photo ops, this is also a good layer. And these are designated photo ops. For example, I know there's a really cool one in Centerburg. There we go. Well, this one's in Sunbury, but this is the Johnny Appleseed statue. So you can see a place that a lot of people stop and get their photo taken. So spend a little time with this map as well. Start to explore it as you're planning your trip. It's great because if you do happen to get lost, you can pull this up on a smartphone and get a sense of where you are and where you need to be. One more thing I wanted to talk about is on this same interactive map page, we have links to an app called Map My Ride. And if you click on one of these, it'll bring up a map that it'll look a little different on your phone if you have the app. I'll just show it to you here on the computer. But you can actually plug this into a GPS device and it will give you turn-by-turn instructions. So it's very easy to use and helps you navigate. A lot of people have asked me over the years, what about the hills? Especially in the more rural areas. Holmes County has hills, guys, but they're Ohio hills. And the way I've advised people about the hills is that the first time I rode the entire trail, I didn't train a lot for the ride, and I did have to walk up and I did have to push my bike up the hill, but it took less than 10 minutes. So that might give you a little idea of how big that was the biggest hill, and it's located in Holmes County. So the hills are not anything to be afraid of or intimidated by. If I could get up the hill, you can do it too. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to turn it over to our second presenter, Matt Simpson.
Well, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, the interactive map, I think, is just a really great tool. I definitely encourage folks to use that. It's getting more robust, it seems like, every day. So we didn't feel like we could have a How to Erie Trail 101 webinar without at least showing you folks a little bit about what you're going to see as you bike the trail. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Are you seeing my PowerPoint at this point? Okay, great. Master slideshow. Okay. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a tour of the Ohio to Erie Trail. I think I am very kind of a typical cyclist in that I've ridden bits and pieces of the Ohio to Erie Trail over the years. But last June, a friend of mine and I decided we were going to ride the whole 326 miles over the course of 4 days. So here we are at the Ohio River. My friend Jay on the right and me on the left here. We're from Central Ohio, and we talked our wives into shuttling us down to Cincinnati and then picking us up in Cleveland. So here we are beginning our trip on a Wednesday morning. We left Columbus in the morning and drove down. It's about 10 o'clock. We're going to plan on camping out the majority of the time. So we are going to have our bikes are packed pretty light. Basically handlebar bags and seat post bags, handlebar with all of our sleeping gear, basically. And in the back, we've got raincoats and clothes and a little bit of food. As far as how much food, I don't recommend you bring much. Bring snacks for the day as you need them, but you're going to find that there are great places to eat along the entire trail. And that really was one of the highlights, trying to find the best places for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to get a bite to eat. So our route, we decided to do the 4-day trip, 4-day itinerary. We modified ours a little bit compared to what Lisa mentioned in the website. We wanted to stop in London, Ohio on our first day, but generally about 80 miles a day, roughly. First day was our longest day. We were going to do nearly 100 miles, and they got 80 in the final day, about 70 miles. So we ended up starting in Cincinnati, got to London, Ohio, where we camped out. In Mount Vernon, we stayed in a hotel. And then in Massillon, we camped out again, and then we made our final trip up to Cleveland. So this is what I labeled as lots of tree canopy tunnel. The Erie Trail is a really great place to ride because a lot of it's on railroad corridor, and there are lots of trees and wooded areas. So you have this nice cover. You're not exposed much. It's just a nice, pleasant environment for the vast majority of this bike path. You follow the number 1 signs. Erie Trail really is pretty well signed. We also had a GPS unit that did turn-by-turn navigations, but we are really able to follow those signs the vast majority of the trip. You kind of need to pay a little bit more closely attention when you're in the towns and cities to make sure you don't miss a turn, or but once you're especially out in these rural areas, it's just a nice straight shot, and really hard to get off the trail. One of our first destinations, I guess, was in Loveland, Ohio. And Loveland, if you don't know it, is one of those towns where if you talk to other cyclists and you're talking about places to go, and they say, oh, you got to go to London. London's this great town. And it really was. We thoroughly enjoyed it. It's about 25 miles or so outside downtown Cincinnati. The town really caters to cyclists. The bike path that you see there on the left and it's right, both. The businesses really have turned their front doors to it. There's restaurants, there's breweries, lots of bike parking, just a lot of activity going on there. The problem with Loveland, if you're starting in Cincinnati and you're heading north for a full day's ride, is that we got there about lunch. So early in our ride, about 25 miles, and we had a nice big lunch, and there's a brewery there, so we had to have a couple beers. But then we still had 75 more miles to go to our destination. So it was a little bit tricky to get us motivated to keep on biking. I think we could have stayed there the rest of the day, honestly. But we did get moving on, and which got us to London, Ohio. London has really embraced the Erie Trail, and one of the highlights is their trailside camping. And it's probably, from a camping standpoint, the best that we have, in my opinion. The trail is literally right off to the left. You can just kind of see it there. It's only a few blocks from downtown, but it's this nice little green space. They've got restrooms, there's a shelter, kiosk with all kinds of information about where to eat and things to do. There's tent pads. We were able to set up hammocks in the trees. So just a really nice place to stay. It was quiet. So highly recommend if you're tent camping or plan on roughing it a little bit to look up at London as a destination. Leaving London after having a nice breakfast at a local diner, we hit up on what's called the Camp Chase Trail, which, Erie Trail is made up of a whole lot of little segments. And the Camp Chase is one of those. And it's really, I would say, one of the more success stories, I think, in building this entire trail system. If any of you are kind of in the trail business where you're acquiring right of way and building trails, you know how difficult it can be to get a trail alongside or near a railroad tracks. And for 16 miles, the Erie Trail and the Camp Chase Trail run directly parallel. So it's a rail width trail system, and the trail crosses over the railroad tracks in numerous locations safely. And so this was a really neat portion of the trail. You get to see Ohio's agricultural heritage still going strong with these huge silos and what seemed like miles of railroad cars waiting to be filled with grain. As you come into Columbus, really pretty downtown. Columbus has done a lot of work to their riverfront areas with parks. So if you have some time, this is a great place to stop as well. There's the North Market nearby. Some of the best food places to eat in Columbus are all assembled in one location. You'll bike through Nationwide Arena, so it's kind of a neat area of Columbus. So just a pretty spot and neat place to end up in the kind of midday on our second day. As you're leaving like kind of the Columbus area and you get up into Knox County, Knox is a community that's been in the trail business for a long time. They recognized early on that this old railroad corridor that was abandoned had value, and I think they started acquiring it in the 1980s. So they've had their trails built for a long time, and you can see it by the communities along the trail. And upper left-hand corner is Ariel Foundation Park in Mount Vernon, and it's a park that's right off the trail. And it was at an industrial site that's gone away, but they saved their tower, big smokestack, and they built a observation platform about halfway up this thing. So it really gives you a bird's eye view of the whole town, which is kind of nice. A lot of that tree canopy tunnels, and then as you kind of starting to get towards the edge of Knox County, you get to bike over the Mohican River on the Bridge of Dreams, which is the longest covered bridge in Ohio. Leaving Knox, you go right into Holmes County. And if you know Holmes County, you know it's one of the most prominent places in the country for our Amish folks. Got lots of little neat towns. Millersburg is just a quaint community, great places to eat, got an awesome trailhead. The lower left is a little town of Fredericksburg. In Fredericksburg, you may see more horse and buggies than cars in Fredericksburg. Really neat little community. Tons of Amish. They love the trail as well. They use it to get around. They use it to bike. Amish love to bike. So when you're in this part of the state, be prepared for that, which is really cool to see. Horses kind of trotting down the trail. This area, as Lisa mentioned, is there's a couple sections, longer sections that are on road, but they're really pretty. And the farms out there are beautiful. The Amish take such great care of their properties. For us, biking it really didn't take away from the trip at all. The only thing you have to kind of watch out for is with cars. So you do have to kind of be more cautious and just pay attention, to what's going on around you and behind you. Once you get up into the last leg, kind of the Massillon area, heading towards Cleveland, it gets a little bit more urban, I guess, a little bit more densely populated areas because you have Massillon, Canton area. You'll go through Akron, and then you get into the Cleveland area. But it just gets neat feature after neat feature. Akron just did a great job of their trail system. Summit County. Here's the Summit Lake Boardwalk, which is just this boardwalk that seemed to go on forever, but just a really pretty area with lakes and wetlands. And get to Ernie's Bike Shop, which is kind of iconic bike shop along the Erie Trail. You have to stop there. You can go kayaking and all kinds of stuff, but just a fun place along the trail itself. And as you keep going north, for those of you who were maybe outside of Ohio, we do have a national park, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and it has a towpath trail. And this part of the heart of Erie changes a little bit. So far, the vast majority has been on a rail trail. When you get up into this part of the state, it oftentimes will change over to a towpath. So using the old canal, the Heart of Erie Canal Path. So the actual canal is on the right-hand side of the image, and then you have the towpath on the left. And material surfaces change a little bit too. For the most part, it was asphalt. You get up into here, it's oftentimes a limestone screenings or fines, or just a real nice gravel surface, which I kind of like. It has that nice sound to it. It's all very well maintained. So I think you can do about any bike on it. I wish I had a better image because Cuyahoga is a beautiful park. This doesn't do it justice, but you know, along this section of the trail, you're going to go by lots of different locks. There's a visitor center. It's a really nice portion of the trail itself. One item of caution, though, plan more time to get through this particular section of the trail. We came through on a Saturday morning and on the summer, so it was busy. There's a lot of other people out using it. You know, there's cyclists and walkers and things. So it just takes you more time to get around folks, you know, that are just kind of more joyriding, or we're trying to do quite a few miles. And lastly, you'll end up at Edgewater Park in Cleveland, just kind of west of downtown. They got an iconic sign that everybody gets their picture taken with. And of course, there's the beach where you end at. And make sure always you dip your front wheel in the tire, and all the people at the beach are kind of wondering who these strange cyclists are and why they're putting their bikes in the lake. But that's kind of fun, and finish there. And it's a really nice part of Cleveland, the neighborhood. We stayed in a bed and breakfast there that evening and really enjoyed our evening out. Kind of celebrated doing the entire trail. So I think at this time, we're able to take questions. If folks want to chime in, or Tom, do you have questions folks have typed up?
Yes, I do, Matt and Lisa. So we'll start working through them. Then we'll unmute folks after we get through these questions. All right, let me bring them up here. Somebody would like to know the logistics of planning the trip in terms of one way, leaving a car at one end and cycling to the other. And a similar question came up, like what type of shuttle services are available, or what have other people done? So
there is a page on our website called Friends Along the Trail. And at the very top, there is a shuttle service called Vegas Velo. It's a little difficult name to articulate, but it's basically VEGAS and then Velo, VELO. And they do shuttle services all over the trail. So you can certainly park at one end and then they'll take you back to your car. And did I answer everything there? Was there a second part to that question?
To add to that, I believe on the website, Lisa, there's also listings of suggested parking places at trail end, if I'm not mistaken, that people can look at.
Yeah, a good tip for that though is, because it sometimes can be difficult to find long-term parking, is to spend the night, that first night that you go into town, and work with the hotel, and they'll usually give you a pretty good rate for doing a long-term parking, and it's usually a secure garage. We've had limited success with long-term parking through places like Cleveland Metro Parks. Sometimes they allow it, sometimes they don't, depending on, of course, what's going on that weekend. If they have a big event, nothing they need to worry about maybe last season or this season, but sometimes they allow it, sometimes they don't. But you could also try Cleveland Metro Parks. And then in Cincinnati, there are some places that I believe are listed on the Plan Your Trip page for long-term parking.
And somebody had chimed in chat that they used U-Haul, and I've used U-Haul, not necessarily on this trail, but others, and it actually is somewhat of a reasonable way to do it. So, Okay. The next question was a curiosity about the frequency of bathrooms and the availability of drinking water along the trail. So,
Matt, do you want to answer that one since you wrote it last year?
Yeah. One of the beauties of this trail system is you go through a community really about every 10 miles. I mean, there was only, I think, one stretch where we kind of wondered how, do we need to bring some extra water, get some extra supplies? But you hit an old rail town like really pretty frequently. So there was never a time where we really couldn't get water or use a restroom. The communities that have this amenity are usually, we're very open to us to stopping in and getting a pop and using their bathroom. So we were not worried about that at all, and it worked out just fine. Trailheads oftentimes will have waters and restrooms too.
okay. The next question is, are there multi-day group trips that are organized on the trail? And I think Lisa is probably most qualified to answer that. So.
Yeah, so Wilderness Voyagers, which is a touring company, they're actually based on the Gap Trail. For the first time this year, they're doing a guided group tour. So you should check out Wilderness Voyagers. Check out their website. It's listed on their website. And they're actually going to be doing a webinar about that tour in March. So look on our Facebook page for more information coming about that. And then Columbus Outdoor Pursuits is also thinking of scheduled one in April, the end of April, of doing just quick little overnights on the trail, just to get a taste of what a self-supported bike packing trip is like.
Then, of course, there's the Moffat Memorial Ride, the annual ride for the trail.
Oh, okay. I thought they were talking about other. Yes, let me mention that. So that's sorry about that. That's our fundraiser ride, and it typically happens every September. It's limited to 50 riders, and you can definitely go to our homepage. If you scroll down just past the video, you'll see a box that says Moffat Memorial. We typically have registration open now, but because of COVID, we're sort of waiting. It is a fully supported tour. There's a bike mechanic that comes along with us. There are stops with snacks and beverages every 12 to 15 miles, and also a check-in to make sure you're not having any mechanical issues. And the group stays typically in hotels, although you can stay in campsites as well. Hopefully we'll open registration for that in March.
And to add to this, I have seen that both women tours and I believe it's Senior Cycling offer shorter tours on specific areas of the trail, particularly the southern section, I believe. So, but the next question, I think we answered already. What's the best place to get the updated trail map? And as Lisa pointed out, that map is on our website, and from our website you can also order those map sets in paper. So
and I think it probably shows up. Does it show up backwards? I don't know if it shows up. Okay, this is a visual. This is an example of the map, and you can kind of see it starts to fold out. It has different panels.
Okay. The next question is, what is the ratio of bike paths to on-road cycling?
Well, there's about 49 miles of on-road cycling. You saw some of the pictures that Matt showed. It ranges the on-road from very rural to very pedestrian-friendly roadways, such as Nationwide Boulevard in downtown Columbus, which has a lot of pedestrians and crosswalks. But yeah, I hope I answered that question. There's 49 miles out of the 326 that are.
And it seemed like a lot of those miles were just little short road sections through town. Sometimes you just get in these little communities where the rail corridor was just taken up by some other business. So you just spiking through downtown and you hop back on the trail when you get it kind of out on the edge of town again. So don't let that 50 miles intimidate you. There were only a few longer sections, and they're pretty rural, and we didn't see a lot of cars on those legs.
The next question was on itineraries, and they know the website had through itineraries, and they were curious if there is a Columbus to Cleveland half trail itinerary published.
What you see is what you get on that page. Those were, yeah, our volunteer board member put that together. Not to say that we couldn't add that at some point, but he usually travels the entire trail. So,
all right. So the next question is, the folks are interested in doing out and back rides and the ability to do that, averaging 50 miles. And I can start off the discussion with that because I do this a lot. This trail is pretty fortunate, like Matt had mentioned. This is mostly an old rail corridor, and there are towns with every 10 miles or less, and almost all these itineraries. If you look at the Moffat Memorial Ride itinerary, you'll see that they never travel. The average distance there is probably less than 40 miles, and you can get some beautiful rides in for 25 or 30 miles out and back. Lisa or Matt, anything to add on that?
It's a great way of seeing the trail system. I mean, I think that's how most of us do it, short day trips. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And yeah, it allows you to kind of explore the whole trail over the course of a summer versus a weekend or a week.
The next question I believe we answered, but I'll repeat it again since I answered it in the chat. The question was, do the GPS files have all turn-by-turns, including the roads? Yes, they do, and the road turns are very valuable. So if you're using a program that uses GPS, like Ride with GPS or whatever, or Garmin, you can use those files and they will give you turn-by-turn. The question you hear quite a bit is next is, what's the difference? Should I go northbound or should I go southbound, or is there advantage on either? So.
Well, I haven't done southbound yet. Northbound was, other than the first day, kind of leaving Cincinnati, it is a very, very gentle climb for the first, what seemed like about 100 miles. So whether it looks flat if you're only doing a mile or two, but over the course of an entire day, that gentle climb got pretty tiresome. So maybe heading south, that would be an easier ending point. But from my perspective, it certainly works well going north.
yeah, I mean, the trail is situated between two watersheds, and so what goes up must eventually come down. So it really does not matter. I mean, if you're going up on one side of the hill, eventually you've got to go down. And so it kind of all, kind of evens out at the end.
Okay. Lost my place here. Somebody had a comment is, can we add breweries to the trail map? And so we've had some discussion about identifying these destination trails, as they've called, like a brew trail, an ice cream trail, or whatever. But I can give you this from experience of riding this trail. There are breweries everywhere on this trail. Starting in Cincinnati, there's a lot, even in Loveland, the small town of Loveland, and Xenia has a brewery, and Columbus, where the trail passes through, within blocks, there's probably a half dozen breweries in downtown. And up into Knox County here, we now have 3 in Mount Vernon. There's one in Millersburg, and Akron is just a slew of breweries, and of course Cleveland too. So if you're looking for a brewery, this is a trail where you'll find them, and many times just blocks off the trail, if not on the trail. So somebody wanted to know if our maps identify the surface of the road by segment. And they're also interested in, they would like to know if they could ride a road bike on the trail.
So the first answer is the maps do not, they show roadway versus trail, but they don't show substrate. So they don't show where it's gravel. But I can tell you the majority, the longest stretch of gravel you run into is in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And that will remain that crushed limestone surface. But like Matt said, it's really well groomed. I mean, I had a lot of nervousness about it because I'd never ridden on anything like that, but it was no problem at all. There is also a little 1/4 mile section in the Battelle Darby Metro Park in Franklin County. So you kind of see the theme here. So in some of the parks, they don't want asphalt. So they do a crushed limestone substrate, and it's not bad at all to ride on. In terms of a road bike, sure, yeah, you can definitely ride a road bike. What you need to be more concerned about is the width of your tires. The first year I rode it on 28 tires, and probably don't want to go too much lower than that. I know some people who have done theirs, I think on 25s, but they do have a little difficulty on that crushed limestone section.
Okay. And Lisa just answered the next question, and Matt did too. Which parts of the trail are not paved? And it is the Ohio and Erie Canal Towpath Trail, primarily, with a very small section below Knox County. And it's very much paved the whole way. Somebody asked the question, have we had people that have ridden the trail round trip? In other words, double 326s.
We have, and they have a little star next to their name on the 326 Club. We've got people who've done round trip. We've got people who've done it multiple times in the same season. So you can check all that out on the 326 Club page.
Yes. I encountered a person on the trail last year who started, I believe, in Erie or Buffalo, cycled across to Cleveland, and then did a round trip on the OTET and went back to where they started. That was pretty nice. So somebody wanted to know, is there a place they can look at the different trail names? I believe there's like 22 or 25. Is that right, Lisa? And each of those generally have websites. So, but
yeah, we have a page on our website that has links to all of those partners, and it's just called, let me find it here. I think it's just called Trail Partners. So if you click on that, you will see, starting with, the Ohio River Trail, Great Parks of Hamilton County, Friends of the Little Scenic Miami. So those are all the different segments, the groups that represent those different segments.
okay. And the last question I have here is, what are the official start and end points for the Ohio to Erie Trail?
So the northern terminus is Edgewater Park. And that's where people dip their tire in the water. That's a tradition, if you don't know, whether you're starting or ending. And then the southern terminus is right near the Roebling Suspension Bridge. There's actually a trailhead sign that was on our website. I can check to see if it's still there, but it's a good picture op. A lot of people get their photo taken right there. It's right on it would be the north side of that bridge, because the south side is Kentucky. So north side.
Okay. And that is all the written questions I have, but I have now allowed participants to unmute yourself. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them.
What about, is there like any crime on the trail or trail sections of the trail that you don't want to be out there too late at night or?
Well, I would just say to that, I mean, crime can happen at any time. You know, you are traveling through some urban areas. You just need to be careful as if you were anywhere. Really, I mean, crime can happen anywhere too. I'm not trying to say it's just happening in urban areas, but we don't have any reason to believe there's pockets of crime or anything like that happening on any sections of the trail.
Right. I know we've had trails over in Indiana here, instance where somebody will throw a bunch of tacks out on the trail and stuff, you know, and then people end up with multiple flats on it, you know, stuff like that.
Wow.
But that's usually short-lived, but it's usually somebody's mad about something, you know. And then over in Indianapolis on the Monon, there's been, you know, where kids have knocked people off of bicycles and robbed them, but you know, that's what I was wondering, stuff like that might happen, you know, if there's, I mean, that probably gets reported, right, on your site.
Well, we don't really report that because I've never heard of anything like that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it doesn't happen a lot, but you know, every once in a while, like you say, crime everywhere, you know.
Right.
Some kid gets an idea, hey, I can go out here and knock somebody off with a bicycle and, you know, take it or whatever, and that, you know, but yeah, so it happens, yeah.
I don't have a question, but first of all, just want to commend you on the website. It's fantastic and would make trip planning really easy, I can see. And also for those of you who have concerns about the towpath, I mean, I live near it, I ride it all the time. It's a wonderful trail and lots of fun places to stop along the way, particularly Peninsula, which is the town right in the middle of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, but lots of other kind of cute little towns along the way if anybody, you know, wants to stop more often.
I see, Tom, you're putting some good links there. There's the self-supported bicycle tour, which is our next webinar, in the chat. So if you guys want to check out the chat window for links.
This will be in the post webinar email. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did we talk about Bike Aboard? I don't know if we talked about Bike Aboard in this session. And so Bike Aboard is a program in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park by the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. And it's a real bargain. If you can either start in Akron, you can start in, I believe, 6 stations, the southernmost being in downtown Akron, and the northernmost being at Rockside Road in Independence, the southern part of Cleveland. And you can ride the train if you have a bike for only $5. And I believe the normal fare for that is something like $15. So if somebody is talking about an out and back ride, you could easily do that. You could take that ride. I've done it many times from downtown Akron to Rockside Road and do a little cycling up and come back, and it would be a 28-mile round trip. So it's quite nice ride. You can also do shorter rides. For some reason, you find yourself, as Carol mentioned, let's say you're going south to north and you got to Peninsula and you were a little tired, you could get on the train and ride that. I think it's 12 to 14 miles north to Cleveland. So it's a nice amenity. You have to go to their website. They were restricted and not doing it last year, but I believe they're resuming it this year. And there are some limitations, I believe, on weight of bicycle that might impact e-bike or trike on, but I just kind of wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it's fun.
If I could comment on that Bike Aboard, wife and I did that a couple years ago, and it was really great. We have recumbents, and they took it on no problem. And the nice thing is you see a little bit different scenery on the train line than you do on the trail. So you kind of get both, you know, if you're going one way and go back the other way, you kind of get a different scenery. So I would recommend it to anybody who wanted to try that. It was great.
I saw a question on chat about, is there an elevation chart? If you go to the interactive map page, you'll see 4 links to map my ride. And when you click on each of those links, it will show you the elevation chart for that segment of the ride. And don't be fooled, the elevation charts can look a little scary. But like I said, the hills I found were doable, even if I had to walk up one of them. I also saw a question on here about, can you ride the trail at night? So some of the towns that the trail goes through are so small that they really just have like a volunteer EMS crew. So we ask that you follow the guidelines of those towns, whatever they say, because if you were to be in an accident, there's a lot of raccoons and possums that can dart out on the trail at night. We wouldn't want someone tasked with, you know, a volunteer having, I mean, they would, I'm not saying they wouldn't, but we're just trying to make sure that we follow the guidelines of our local trail partners. And we don't ride at night if they have a sign up that says the trail closes at dusk. So there are segments along the way that will have the trail sign posted that tells the hours of when the trail's open.
Someone had posted a question about the taking a recumbent on the Vegas Velo shuttle service, and I was wondering, do they accommodate recumbent bicycles?
As far as I know, they do. I haven't heard otherwise, and they've been a partner of ours for a couple years now. So I would have probably heard a complaint by now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What about tandems? Do they do tandems?
I would guess they do. Again, I haven't heard that they don't.
That's what I wondered too about the train up in the Cuyahoga Valley. Do they accept tandems?
I use that a lot. I don't know that I've ever seen that situation. The issue there would be the weight. Somebody told me they recently initiated a 50-pound limit. Now that's what I heard. I'm not an employee of Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, but the way they load their bikes is there are ceiling hooks for the traditional bike, and I don't know how long a tandem is that they would fit, but with recumbents or trikes, that they do have floor space for them. So I can't see a tandem being an issue on that train unless it was some horrendous weight. They ask you to take your pannier bags or whatever off to lessen the weight. So.
Thank you.
Like I said, they accommodated our recumbents with no problem. We took our panners off, and ours is about 50 pounds. So, that was a couple years ago. So unless they've changed it, why I would say, yeah, probably.
So I would go to the link that we added there for Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, and it's a very thorough website. We'll give you schedules and so forth, and I'm sure they have their terms and regulations. Any other questions? I hope everybody gets out on the trail. Somebody had asked a general question, is like, what about short rides on the trail? So I thought I just might mention that there are many, I'm on the trail quite a bit as a volunteer in Knox County here. There are Facebook groups, there's meetup groups, groups like Columbus Outdoor Pursuitists that Lisa mentioned, that do rides on this trail. So you might do that or Google, and you'll find groups of people on this trail, almost just about anywhere on this trail, actually. So I see a lot in Knox County, but Knox County is a very popular part of this trail. With, the 3 trails in Knox County are Heart of Ohio Trail, Cocosian Gap, and the Mohegan Valley Trail. So.
I know a few years ago, we stayed in Xenia for a couple of days and just hubbed out of there each day on the trails out of there, and that was really nice.
Yeah,
And I
that
would-
idea of hub is a good idea, and there are ideal places for it. All the urban areas of the trail, all three cities have extensive trail networks, particularly Columbus and Cleveland. You could make it a stay in Columbus or a suburb and cycle trail. And as he mentioned, Xenia is a beautiful hub, which you can explore our trail and the Miami Valley Trailways. I think it's close to 400 miles of paved trail. There's a lot of paved trail there. And the same goes if you head up into the Akron and Cleveland area. Cleveland's doing a fantastic job on trails. You can go everywhere, and so is Akron. So the idea of doing a hub and spoke out and back would very much work on this trail.
I saw another question about connecting to other trails. You want to check out something on the Rails to Trails Conservancy website called the Great American Rail Trail. It will use a large segment of the Ohio to Erie Trail, and it will somehow, and I don't know the details of it, but if you go to their site, it will show, it's not a done trail by any means, but it will somehow connect to the Gap Trail. So check that out if you're trying to ride from there to the Ohio to Erie.
Okay. I see Danielle, who I know is a volunteer for Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, just posted that she looked it up on the website, and it's a 40-pound limit or a bike that can't be lifted by two people. Now, Danielle and I both know they don't weigh bikes when you get on Bike Aboard, but if you sense your bike can be lifted by two people, which most bikes can, and in terms of an e-bike, you might have to take your battery off. But so thanks, Danielle, for that update. So you might see her as a train. I think she's a train person on the railroad. So
It's fun.
yeah. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everybody, and especially Matt and Lisa for tonight's presentation. And I encourage you to go out and visit the website that Lisa showed us, ohio-to-erie-trail.org, and you'll learn a lot about the trail there. Also, go to the Facebook page, our official Facebook page. We post all updates there and news. The unofficial Facebook group is another good place to look. We have an Instagram feed, and we have a YouTube channel that we're bringing to life this year. So that's one of our focuses this year in marketing. You're going to see some YouTube videos. So those would be things to do. We'll send you the links. I've pasted them many times in the chat. So our next webinar will be on Wednesday, February 24th at 7. And that is going to be self-supported bicycle touring. And that is going to be presented by Deltrice Daniels. And Deltrice Daniels is an excellent speaker. She is a bicycle advocate, a safe streets type person. She's a professional educator on bicycle topics, and a very active member of Bike Cleveland. So I think Deltrice's session will be very good. I know she has written an ABCs of self-supported bicycle touring. So I have not seen it, and I'm looking forward to that. So that registration is open on our Facebook page, and I invite you to take a moment to register. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye and thank you for your attention. And we hope to see you on an upcoming webcast. Good night.
Night.